People say you eventually get used to being the disappointment of the family, but I don't think anyone really does. I learned to hide the sting behind a quiet smile, but it doesn't mean it stopped hurting. My sister Melissa made sure everyone remembered my failures. At family dinners, she'd brag about her promotions, her luxury condo, her perfect life, then casually remind everyone that I'd still not figured out what I wanted to be. It was like a script she rehearsed just to keep me in place. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't know where I fit. Every time I tried something new, someone, usually Melissa, would laugh and say, "That's not for you, Evan." My parents never corrected her. They would just look at me with that disappointed softness like they were apologizing for me being me. The night everything changed didn't feel special at all. I was sitting alone at a quiet cafe, filling out job applications I didn't even care about. That's when an older gentleman approached my table. He wore a tailored navy suit and carried himself with the kind of calm confidence money couldn't buy. He asked if he could sit, and for some reason, I said yes. His name was Charles Whitmore. I didn't know it then, but everyone in the city knew who he was. He owned Whitmore Industries, one of the oldest manufacturing companies in the state. Yet he talked to me like we were equals. He asked what I wanted out of life. I told him the truth. I wasn't sure anymore. He didn't laugh. He didn't judge. Instead, he said something that stuck with me. Uncertainty is just potential waiting for a direction. He gave me his card and told me to come by his office if I ever wanted to try something new. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not Melissa, not my parents. It wasn't worth hearing her say, "You think someone like him is interested in someone like you?" Still, a part of me felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. If you're listening and you've ever been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to lift you up, trust me, this journey might hit close to home. Stick around, because what happened next changed everything for me. I still remember the first time I walked into Whitmore Industries. The building felt intimidating, sleek glass exterior, marble floors, people moving with purpose. I expected to be stopped by security or told there had been some mistake. Instead, the receptionist smiled warmly and said, "Mr. Whitmore has been expecting you." Expecting me. That alone felt unreal. Charles greeted me like an old friend. He gave me a tour, introducing me to people whose names I immediately forgot out of nerves. Then he walked me into a small conference room and said, "Let's start simple. I want you to shadow me for a week. No pressure. Just watch, listen, learn." No one had ever offered me something like that. Not out of obligation, not out of pity, just genuine belief. During those first days, I found myself absorbing everything. How he handled meetings with calm authority, how he listened more than he spoke, how he asked people questions that made them think instead of fear him. He wasn't the ruthless CEO stereotype. He was something else, a builder of people. One afternoon, he asked me to sit in on a strategy session. Melissa would have laughed herself into the floor if she'd seen me there among executives in $1,000 suits. But Charles made me feel like I belonged. When he asked for my opinion on something, the room went silent. My palms started sweating, my voice shook, but I said what I thought. And Charles smiled and said, "Good, that's exactly the angle we needed." After that, he started giving me tasks. Small at first, research, summaries, drafting ideas. Then bigger, evaluating proposals, presenting options, negotiating details. I never told my family what I was doing. I didn't want to hear their disbelief or sarcasm. I wanted this one thing to be mine, at least for a while. Melissa, however, kept playing her role. Every time we were forced into the same room, she'd joke about my career of the month, telling relatives I was probably working at a gas station or quitting another job. She acted like her words were harmless. Maybe to her they were, but to me, they cut deeper each time. Then came the night that defined everything. It was my mother's birthday dinner, and as usual, Melissa took over the evening. She toasted her own achievements like it was her personal award ceremony. Eventually, the conversation turned to careers, and someone asked me how things were going. Before I could answer, Melissa said, "Come on, don't embarrass him. He's trying his best to find something, again." People laughed. My parents didn't correct her. No one defended me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't stay quiet. I stood up, looked right at her, and said, "You have no idea what I'm capable of." The table fell silent. Melissa raised an eyebrow and said, "Please, Evan, don't start pretending you're suddenly important." Important. That word sat in my chest like a burning stone. I walked out without finishing dinner. No one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. But when I got into my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Charles. "Big day tomorrow. I have something important to share with you." I had no idea how important. I barely slept that night. Charles's message kept replaying in my head. He wasn't someone who used big words lightly, so when he said something was important, he meant it. I showed up early the next morning, long before most employees arrived. The building was quiet, and for a moment, the stillness made me feel like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't yet see. When Charles arrived, he greeted me with that same warm, steady smile he always had. But there was something else in his eyes that morning, something heavier. He invited me into his office and closed the door behind us. "Evan," he said, "I want to talk to you about the future." The future? My throat tightened. I nodded, trying to hide how nervous I was. He sat down across from me, folded his hands, and said, "You've grown more in the past year than most people do in 10. Your perspective, your integrity, your willingness to learn, these are the qualities leaders are built from." Leaders, a word I had never once associated with myself. He continued, "I won't be able to run this company forever, and I've been thinking a lot about who should guide it when I'm gone." He cleared his throat softly. "I don't have children. My extended family isn't involved in this world. I've spent my life building something I'm proud of. But what matters most to me now is leaving it with someone who will protect it, grow it, and honor the people who've given their lives to make it what it is." My heartbeat became a thick thud in my ears. He looked me in the eyes, not like a mentor, but almost like a father. "I believe that person is you." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I actually turned to look behind me, convinced he must have been talking to someone else. "Me?" I finally whispered. "You," he said without hesitation. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No one had ever believed in me the way he did, not even close. But the idea of me leading anything, let alone a multi-million-dollar company, felt impossible. "Charles, I'm not ready for something like that," I stammered. He smiled gently. "No one ever feels ready. I wasn't ready when my father handed me the reins. But readiness grows in the doing." Then he placed a folder in front of me. Inside were long-term plans, structures, and notes he'd written about leadership and legacy. He'd been preparing this for a while, maybe from the moment he met me. I didn't realize how long we talked. Hours passed without either of us noticing. By the time I left his office, I felt like my entire life had shifted, like some invisible weight I'd carried for years had finally started to lift. But life has a way of balancing highs with lows. Later that week, my family held a dinner for Melissa. She had just won some award at work, and they were celebrating like she'd been crowned royalty. I showed up out of obligation more than anything. The moment I walked in, Melissa smirked and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Look who finally made time for his busy schedule of whatever it is he does." Old Evan would have let it slide. Old Evan would have swallowed the insult and hidden the hurt. But that version of me was fading. I didn't react. I didn't rise to her bait. I just sat there, quiet and calm, and that annoyed her more than anything. Halfway through dinner, she asked, "So, Evan, what's your big plan now? Still trying to figure out your purpose?" I could hear the venom wrapped in fake curiosity. This time, I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "I'm working with someone who sees potential in me, and that's enough." She laughed, a sharp, dismissive laugh she'd perfected over the years. "Sure, Evan, whatever helps you sleep at night." My parents didn't defend me. They didn't ask questions. They just kept eating. I realized then that I had finally outgrown that table, that room, that life. I didn't belong there anymore, and maybe I never had. The next day at the office, Charles seemed a little tired. He brushed it off, said it was just a long week, but something felt off. He scheduled a meeting with his lawyers and requested my presence. I didn't know it then, but that meeting would change everything. As the lawyers laid out documents, Charles explained that these were his updated estate plans. They talked about trusts, shares, company transfers, things far beyond my world at the time. But the message was clear. He was serious. He wasn't giving me a promotion. He was giving me a legacy. When the meeting ended, he placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "No matter what happens, remember this. You are worthy of every opportunity you've earned." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. That moment would become the last time he spoke to me with that much energy. Because 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. Charles suddenly collapsed at home, heart failure, gone before the ambulance arrived. I don't remember much from that day. Just shock, numbness, and a sense of losing the only person who had ever believed in me without conditions. But at the reading of his will, Melissa and my parents would learn something they never expected. And their expressions, I will never forget. The day of the will reading felt unreal from the moment I woke up. I hadn't slept much since Charles passed. My mind kept replaying every conversation, every piece of advice, every moment he had believed in me when no one else did. Part of me still expected him to walk into his office with that calm confidence, brushing off the entire thing as a misunderstanding. But reality doesn't work like that. Death doesn't negotiate. I arrived early at the law office. The place was quiet, too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I sat in the waiting lounge, memories crashing over me. His smile, his encouragement, the way he made me feel seen in a world that had worked so hard to convince me I was invisible. Losing him felt like losing the only compass I ever had. Then the door opened and my family walked in. Melissa was dressed like she was attending a networking event. Sleek hair, tailored dress, confidence dripping off her like she owned the building. My parents followed behind her, trying to look composed but clearly unsure of what to expect or why they'd even been invited. When Melissa saw me, she narrowed her eyes slightly, as if confused that I was there at all. "What are you doing here?" she asked, crossing her arms. Before I could answer, the attorney stepped out. "Evan is here because Mr. Whitmore requested his presence." Melissa blinked, surprised, but quickly hid it behind that polished smirk she wore like armor. "Oh, right, of course. Charles was fond of you." She said it with the same tone she used to describe a stray dog. My parents didn't say much. My mom gave me a small, polite nod while my dad just looked around the office, probably calculating how much everything cost. We were escorted into a long conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of room where big decisions were made. At the head of the table sat a small stack of documents and a sealed envelope. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if Charles's presence still lingered somewhere in the room. The attorney began speaking. Mr. Whitmore was a private man, but he cared deeply for the people he chose to have in his life. His estate plan is very specific, and all of you are here because you were named in his final instructions. Melissa straightened, obviously expecting something significant. My parents exchanged hopeful glances. I just sat there, hands clasped together, heart pounding. The attorney continued. "Before I read the formal document, Mr. Whitmore left a personal note. He wanted it read aloud." He opened the envelope slowly, and for a moment the room went silent. "To those gathered," he began, "life has taught me that family is not defined only by blood, but by integrity, loyalty, and character. Some people earn a place in our lives. Others simply assume it." My mother stiffened. My father shifted in his seat. Melissa's smile faltered for the first time. The attorney read on. "I leave small acknowledgments to those who have crossed my path, but my life's work, my company, my shares, and my legacy belongs to the person who showed me the greatest potential, the one who never asked for anything except a chance to grow, the one who proved that humility and determination are worth more than arrogance and entitlement." Melissa sat up straighter, as if preparing to stand and accept her praise. I didn't move. I was afraid to even breathe. The attorney lifted the next page. "To Evan Harper, I leave Whitmore Industries in its entirety, valued at $34 million. The room stayed silent for one long, suspended second. Then Melissa laughed, a short, strangled sound that didn't even sound like her. "I'm sorry, what? Did he say Evan?" The attorney nodded. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore left his company, assets, and executive authority to Evan." My mother swallowed hard. My father leaned back as if the wind had been knocked out of him. "But Melissa," she snapped. No, this has to be wrong." She turned to the attorney like he had personally betrayed her. "Are you kidding me? Evan? Evan gets everything. My brother can barely manage his own life. Her voice rose with every word. Why would Charles give him a company? Why not me? I'm the successful one. I actually have a career, a reputation. I finally met her eyes. Maybe that's why. She glared at me, trembling with shock and something else. Fear. Real fear. The kind you feel when the world tilts in a direction you never imagined. This can't be happening, she whispered. This has to be a joke. It's not a joke, the attorney said firmly. These documents were updated and notarized 4 weeks before Mr. Whitmore passed. There is no ambiguity. For the first time in my life, I watched Melissa truly lose control. Not the theatrical frustrations she sometimes displayed, but real, raw, unraveling disbelief. My mother finally spoke. Evan, is this true? You were working for him? I nodded quietly. I was learning from him. He believed in me. Melissa scoffed. Believed in you? He must have been senile. The attorney cut in sharply. Ms. Harper, Mr. Whitmore was in full mental capacity when these decisions were made, and he was very clear in his reasoning. He turned to me. He described you as the most promising person he'd met in decades. He said you reminded him of himself. I don't know what hit me harder, hearing his final words or realizing how deeply they bruised Melissa's ego. The attorney handed me a pen. You'll need to sign a few initial documents today. The full transition plan will roll out over the next several weeks. Mr. Whitmore set everything in motion so the process would be smooth. My hands shook slightly as I signed, not from fear, just the overwhelming weight of it all. As I placed the pen down, Melissa slammed her hand on the table. This isn't over, Evan. I looked at her, calm in a way she had never seen. It already is. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. When we walked out of that office, everything had changed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't following a path. I was leading one. And Melissa wasn't ready for what that meant. The days following the will reading felt like stepping into a life that didn't belong to me. Everywhere I went, people looked at me differently. Some with curiosity, some with suspicion, and a few with respect they hadn't shown before. I wasn't sure how to react to any of it. I'd spent most of my life trying not to be noticed, and suddenly I was at the center of a story everyone wanted to talk about. Even the employees at Whitmore Industries were confused at first. They knew me as the quiet guy who shadowed Charles, the one who asked too many questions and stayed late to learn things he didn't understand yet. But when the announcement was made, when the board officially confirmed that I was the new owner, everything shifted. People watched me with that uncertain, cautious expression usually reserved for sudden storms or unexpected miracles. The board called an emergency meeting the following week. I walked into the conference room feeling like an imposter wearing someone else's skin. 12 executives sat around the long table, each of them older, more experienced, and more polished than I would ever appear. They looked at me with a blend of curiosity and skepticism. I didn't blame them. The board chair, a stern man named Lawson, cleared his throat. Evan, first let me say we were all deeply saddened by Charles's passing. He was a guiding force for this company. I nodded, still not used to hearing his absence spoken aloud. Lawson continued, his decision to name you as successor was unexpected. But it was his decision, and according to the legal documents, he was unequivocal. Everyone watched me, waiting. I took a deep breath. I know I'm not what any of you expected. I know I don't have your experience. But Charles believed in me, and I'm not going to let his trust go to waste. There was silence. Then Lawson said, we will respect Mr. Whitmore's wishes. But you should understand something clearly. You are stepping into a world with very little patience for uncertainty. I know, I said. That's why I'm here to learn. I'm not pretending to know everything, but I won't run from the responsibility he gave me. Some of them exchanged glances. Maybe they doubted me, maybe that was fair, but none of them dismissed me outright. After the meeting, I stayed in the office long after everyone had gone home. I walked through the halls, touching the handrails Charles used to grip, standing in the empty cafeteria where he liked to talk to employees, sitting in his chair and spinning it slowly, just trying to feel connected to him again. Every corner of that building held pieces of him, and I wanted to understand all of it. But outside the company's walls, the storm brewing was far less forgiving. Melissa called me nonstop for 3 days straight. Every message was a variation of shock, anger, manipulation, or forced sweetness. I didn't answer any of them. She even came by my apartment once, pounding on the door, yelling that we needed to talk like adults. I ignored her. She left after 10 minutes, but I could hear her muffled yelling all the way down the hallway. My parents were quieter about it, but not by much. My mother left a voicemail saying she wasn't sure what to think anymore, and my father simply said he hoped I wasn't getting in over my head. Not congratulations, not pride, just doubt dressed as concern. Part of me expected their reactions, but a small part had hoped that, for once, they might be happy for me. A week later, Melissa finally cornered me at the company parking garage. I was walking to my car when she stepped out from behind a pillar, arms crossed tightly, jaw clenched. "We're going to talk," she snapped. I sighed. "I have nothing to say to you." "Well, I have plenty to say." She walked right up to me. "You cannot honestly tell me you think you deserve this. $34 million? A whole company? Evan, come on." I didn't ask for any of it. She scoffed. "Oh, please. You manipulated him somehow. You must have. There's no way he looked at you and thought, leader." Her words used to hurt me. Now they just felt predictable. "Believe what you want," I said. "But Charles chose me because I worked for it, because I showed up when no one else believed in me." "Except me," she said sharply. "I believed in you." I turned toward her. "No, Melissa. You believed you were better than me. Those aren't the same thing." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I'm your sister," she said quietly. "Family should be together on things like this. We should share." There it was, the real reason she came. "You want money?" I said. "I want fairness." "You want what you think you're owed," I corrected. She took a breath, her voice trembling. "Do you think you're better than me now?" "No," I said. "I think I finally see you clearly." She stared at me, her face cracking under the weight of years she spent building her identity on being above me. Then her voice dropped to a cold whisper. "You won't be able to handle this company, and when you screw up, everyone will finally see the truth." "Maybe," I said calmly. "But even if I fail, I'd rather fall trying than spend my life tearing someone else down to feel tall." She didn't respond. She just turned and walked away, her heels echoing in the garage like fading anger. After she left, I leaned against my car and let out a long breath. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like running. I didn't feel like shrinking. I felt steady. But I had no idea that the moment I stepped deeper into that company, I'd uncover a secret. One Charles never got the chance to explain. A secret that made everything far more complicated. The secret revealed itself on a rainy Thursday morning, in the form of a dusty blue folder buried in the back of Charles's private filing cabinet. I hadn't planned to look through his old files. I'd only gone into his office to sit in the chair he'd spent half his life in, trying to feel closer to him. But while I was tracing the grain of the wood along the desk, I noticed the cabinet drawer was slightly open, just enough that it couldn't be ignored. Inside were contracts, old reports, handwritten notes, and then the folder. My name was written on the tab in Charles's neat handwriting. I hesitated. Part of me was afraid to open it, afraid it might contain something that would shatter the confidence I was trying so hard to build. But Charles hadn't been the kind of man who hid landmines. He hid lessons. So I opened it. Inside were evaluations of me, not just from our time working together, but from the very beginning. Notes on how I learned, how I handled pressure, how I treated people in the office. There were comments like instinctive leader, needs to trust himself more, shows emotional intelligence beyond his years, potential successor if growth continues. Then I found the letter. Handwritten, sealed, addressed to me. My chest tightened as I broke the seal. "Evan, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer around to say these words. I chose you not because you were perfect, but because you have the courage to become better. Leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about being the kind of person others want to follow. You were that from the moment you walked into my office. My final lesson to you is this. Don't let old voices define your new life. The world tried to tell you who you were,